One of my favorite topics and even favorite article that I've written, the article is titled The Myth of Nocturnal Bucks. A lot of people ask me and clients hire me to, how can I nocturnal proof my property? How can I make sure that the bucks, mature bucks, are moving during the day? It's a favorite topic of mine, and I call it the myth of nocturnal bucks because mature bucks are moving somewhere. They feed 5 times a day just like the rest of the herd. They want to hit their afternoon food source and feed and put on the feed bag just like every other deer. The problem is a lot of properties become nocturnal only, and it's not because of the bucks, it's because of the hunting pressure. Mature buck is not sitting back here 300 yards and then waiting till 2 in the morning when it gets dark at 7 to come on the land. Instead, he's probably coming from a mile away, 2 miles away. He just has a lot of cover and a lot of other deer to go through to get to here, and because of that, he's not here very often. So there's 5 things I like to look at to make sure that your property doesn't become a nocturnal wasteland during the daytime. And you're not going to be able to control a deer herd that way either. You're not going to be able to have a great hunt if that happens either. Number 1, and probably the biggest culprit of nocturnal deer herds, is hunters walking through food plots and spooking deer off of food plots. Food plots are great. They're a great attraction for deer, and unfortunately, they're a great attraction for hunters. It seems like people build this great food plot. They attract and invite every deer from the neighborhood into that food plot, only to go in and spook the deer off that food plot. Now you've educated not only the deer that used to be on your land during the daytime, but the deer that will keep from coming on your land during the daytime for a quarter to a half mile off your boundaries as well. It's a really bad reputation for the deer herd that are coming here. 2, you have to have hidden access on your property. You have to have access that goes around your deer improvements. It goes around your bedding areas, their food sources. You have to have those really non-invasive access points that allow you to get in and out of your land, not only one way, but several different ways. There's many times they're going right up this trail alongside us right now. We're going right through the middle of the property because there's no deer bedded in this area. It's steep hillside. We're getting up the top and hunting a certain movement, and then we're coming way down around this way or way down around that way, and we're taking 45 minutes to get off a 30-acre chunk of cover because we're going so far out of the way to avoid deer movement. So food sources, food plots, making sure your access is great. Now, if you can see behind me, another point, and this goes along with blinds and especially around food plots, you can see a big wall of brush behind me, and you can see the stand up above me. When we walk into that stand, of course, we're walking from around in the backside of this brush. We're coming up here behind the ridge so that deer that were out on this flat, they're not going to see us. In fact, our neighbor harvested a buck, actually came over on this side this year and harvested a wounded buck, and we were able to talk him in by circling him around these ridges to pop up in here, look for him on this bench. The buck was bedded there, got a second shot, was able to put him down, and it was because we can access this. We were just using the same access point as we do for our stand location. So food plots hidden, your access around the whole property, and then even when you climb into a stand, I'd like to be able to get into a stand so if a deer is bedded down 40 yards away, I can get into that blinder stand and not let them know that I was getting in and out, keeping the complete movement secure. And that brings to the next point, defining the line of movement. You have to have defined lines of movement. I go to a lot of properties where there are food plots everywhere. Might sound great on paper, we're trying to feed the deer, we're trying to give them better health. But if you're spooking off all those deer every time you step foot on the property because there's no defined movement, there's no defined bedding, there's no defined afternoon movement where the deer are bedding here and feeding here, it's random and you don't know where they're at, you're trying to improve every square inch of your property, folks, doesn't matter how quality the habitat improvements are, at that point, it's a bad thing because you're spooking all those deer off your property. They're like pinballs. These deer spook these deer and those deer spook those deer. Pretty soon there's no deer on your property during the daylight. You can't influence the deer herd. You can't hunt the deer herd, and you certainly can't hunt those target bucks because they're going to be a half mile away. The 5th thing, once you have food plots, hidden access around your land, you can get into a stand non-invasively, you had defined habitat improvements. The 5th point is you have to be quiet. You know, if I drove a 4-wheeler up here and the old people that used to hunt this land did this, before they even got to the land, all those deer were exiting off this property because they could hear that 4-wheeler that comes out here only 10, 12 times a year. The deer knew to exit their property. We were on the neighbor's property. We had 40 deer go up by us sometimes right at daybreak. The guys that were hunting on this 30 acres wouldn't see a deer, and we're seeing 50 over there, just pushing them all off. Big packs, snaps, Velcro, zippers, anything, your boots, your clothing. If it's loud, If you can't sneak up on your buddy that's 5 feet away on concrete with the clothing you're wearing for hunting, get rid of the clothing. I rely on my Sitka clothing. It's a high quality clothing company, and very, very quiet. They put a lot of thought into being an actual predator when you're in the deer woods. And so when you have those 5 points taking place, when you're not spooking deer, when you're getting around the deer, when you have defined lines of movement, you have bedding, you have travel, you have food over here, then how can you help but not have deer on your land during the daytime? If you're not spooking them and you're building great quality habitat and you're putting in a line where you know every time you come in the woods, these deer bedded here, they're traveling here, they're feeding here, you're not spooking out any of those quality areas, and you're using quiet gear, and you're actually moving around the woods like a sniper. You're getting into your ambush spots successfully, you're getting out successfully without spooking deer. Try those 5 factors and don't be surprised if you have a lot more daylight deer on your property this year, including the entire deer herd, the mature bucks that you want to target, and do those 5 things, and it's a great recipe for success every single fall.